everyone, I'm Maria McLachlan and I want to say something about lesbian erasure. I've mentioned many times the erasure of women as a sex class with specific needs that are distinct from the needs of men. These needs are recognised nowadays in rules, customs and laws as sex-based rights and protections. They include things like the right to compete in sports that, for the sake of fairness, are segregated by sex. To have certain spaces that, for the sake of privacy and safety, are single-sex, as well as employment rights around maternity. On my website at peaktrans.org I have a page, in fact several pages, full of examples of women's erasure. Today I will focus specifically on the erasure of lesbians and what that actually means. I'm not a lesbian myself, so this is not something I am experiencing personally and directly, but I care about it as a woman, as the mother of a lesbian, as the grandmother of a child being raised by lesbians, and as a friend of many others. I can't tell you how proud I am to personally know so many lesbians standing up to those who want to redefine them out of existence, including Stonewall and their supporters. Stonewall UK, of course, is the charity that was originally set up to campaign for gay and lesbian rights, but who have, over the last several years now, totally sold them down the river. I mean, check out their new lesbian t-shirt. It's modelled by a man. What message is that supposed to send out? There's also the Pride, and I'll take this opportunity to plug the incredibly courageous group of women involved in Get the L Out, and indeed every other group of lesbian feminists who, prior to lockdown, were turning up at Pride events all over the country to protest lesbian erasure. The word to erase obviously means to make disappear, and from where I'm sitting on the outside, the erasure of lesbians appears to be happening in two main ways. Around the end of last year, 2020, a lot of fuss was made because one of the excellent but much maligned LGB Alliance co-founders, Kate Harris, was reported in the Telegraph as saying, "Is lesbianism going to become extinct? Yes, it's deeply uncool. At school, in universities, it is so uncommon it is at the bottom of the heap. Becoming trans is now considered the brave option." Also mentioned was a special needs school where there are 24 pupils who have declared themselves transgender, but not one has come out as gay or lesbian. Now, that's anecdotal, but really quite extraordinary if true, and I can well believe it. We are hearing similar stories from a variety of sources. A few years ago, there was a conference on lesbian erasure in London. Here are a couple of short clips.
We know from Mumsnet coming on to young lesbians, and mothers who are now contacting the Lesbian Rights Alliance, that teenage gender non-conforming lesbians are not being supported to be lesbian in many schools. Instead, they're allowing these girls to experience sexist, misogynistic, anti-lesbian bullying from other students, which most schools continue to fail to address. We know now that many young lesbians who come out of school and the lack of positive affirmation of their sexuality acts as a trigger for them to decide to transition. For these teenagers has become highly stigmatised. It is viewed as old-fashioned and uncool, and instead trans ideology persuades these girls that they are really men born into the wrong body, the body of a woman but with the brain of a man.
I'm a lesbian, immigrant, Jewish woman, a descent of Holocaust survivor, and yet I still can't believe that for the past few years I'm reliving the same situation that takes me almost 10 years, where my sexuality and being as a woman, as a lesbian woman, is demonized and almost pathologized and constantly under the attack. But it comes clear that the only way to be accepted in nowadays society is self-erasure. Many lesbians with whom I grew up, that I was involved in activists, with whom we survived detentions, lawsuits, harassment, internet bullying, bullying in general by Nazis, homophobes, and everybody else basically in Lithuania, survived that, but got cracked under the pressure of queering. Most of them identifies now as queer, non-binary, gender fluid, and all of that glitter and unicorns. and it's devastating. Lesbians are mutilating their bodies, putting their lives and mental health in jeopardy because once again, we don't belong, and this is a price of acceptance.
In another video I did, I looked at a report from The Times which quoted a number of clinicians at the GIDS, the Gender Identity Development Service at the Tavistock Gender Clinic in North London, which sees kids up to the age of 18. Young lesbians considered at the bottom of the heap suddenly found they were really popular when they said they were trans. We heard a lot of homophobia which we felt nobody was challenging. A lot of the girls would come in and say, "I'm not a lesbian, I fell in love with my best girlfriend, but then I went online and realised I'm not a lesbian, I'm a boy." Phew. A news story in the Mail recently reported that a 13-year-old girl said to her mother, "I'll get bullied for being a girl, but I won't get bullied for being trans." The best picture of what's happening is given by the GIDS statistics, which show the increase in referrals of children and teenagers and the massive increase in girls seeking to transition. The statistics don't tell us how many of those girls were lesbians, but since some were believed to be motivated by internalised homophobia and didn't admit to being lesbians, it's unlikely they'd be able to get a true record anyway. So the best I can say is that I believe a large number, almost certainly a large majority, are lesbians. Anyway, obviously Kate's point was not that lesbians are dying out, with no new ones being born, but that coming out as a lesbian is now seen as infra-dig or uncool, as she puts it. The word extinct is hyperbolic, of course, but it had the benefit of inspiring a whole bunch of people with too much time on their hands to waste it by trying to mock the notion. This guy, for example, who late last year started a YouTube channel called Peak Trans. In his first video, he said he got the idea from a website called Peak Trans. He also does a podcast called Peak Trans, and he writes for Medium under the same title. You know what they say about imitation being the best form of flattery? Well, it's a load of cobblers. I reckon he did it to wind me up and mislead feminists, and I reckon it's now backfired, at least as far as his YouTube channel is concerned. Apparently that name didn't work out well for him, and he's changed it. I love the thought of his fans saying to him, "Well, I searched for your YouTube channel Peak Trans, but all these videos by some nasty old turf kept cropping up." Obviously, I don't know if that is what actually happened, because I don't know if he's even got any fans. Anyway, he now uses his real false name of Jen Ives. Jen made a very short video called "Lesbians Are Extinct." Here's a few seconds worth.
I feel so lucky to have access to these incredibly rare artefacts which point to a much simpler time in history when lesbians roamed the earth before transsexuals like me came along and made them all extinct.
I can see why this might be funny if you are one of those directly participating in the erasure of lesbians in the other sense, which I'll get onto in a minute, or if you are aligned with them, and I imagine Jen Ives is in the latter group. Judging by his persona, which I do find strangely endearing actually, I doubt he's ever been attracted to a woman, so hopefully he doesn't claim to be a lesbian while he's performing his idea of womanhood. I did ask what he would call himself, and he said he'd call himself a taxi, which is probably the funniest joke he's ever made. Hilarious. There was even a hashtag on Twitter, "Not Extinct Lesbian," where lesbians took the opportunity to post pictures showing that however decrepit they appear these days, they're not extinct yet, as well as demonstrating that they are dim enough to miss the point entirely. Kate Harris of LGB Alliance was talking about a worrying trend amongst young women. She was talking about the direction we as a society seem to be going in. Anything to say about that? Not extinct lesbians? Or is that too intellectually challenging for you? Right, now let's move on to the other meaning of lesbian erasure. Oh, by the way, what inspired me to make this video was a conversation that I've been having with a woman who came across my channel by accident rather than design. The video that appeared in her recommended list was one taken by somebody else that I uploaded to my channel, and it shows a bunch of people yelling at the Lesbian Strength March in Leeds in 2019. We've exchanged several comments, me and her, but this one stood out in particular. And there's so much wrong with it, I could probably do a whole video on it. But I'm just going to deal with the obvious one. If a male is now female and know they are lesbian, then they should have rights as a lesbian. So this is a prime example of lesbian erasure, and from a lesbian. I'm sure most people watching this video know that we can't change sex, we can only change our appearance. A male cannot become a female, ergo a heterosexual man can't know he's a lesbian. He knows damn well what he is, and it matters even more when heterosexual men demand access to women on the pretense of being lesbians. Right, here is a tweet by the journalist Jane Fay and what he calls TERF logic. A decade ago, 1.2% of women identified as lesbian, now 1.9% do. Explain how this is proof that the trans are erasing lesbians. We can ignore those statistics. Jane doesn't provide a source or any information, and crucially, we don't know whether any of the women are actually trans-identifying men because of their determination to erase women as a sex class. I've not been able to find those figures. I've found rather different figures from different sources, but to be honest, all statistics in which people declare their sexual orientation need to be treated with caution. But assuming those figures do in fact refer to actual women, his point is that if more lesbians are identifying as lesbians, how are lesbians being erased? It's a fallacious argument because he's using the word erase differently from how the word is used by gender critics. It's semantic equivocation. The gender critical argument is, well, it doesn't matter how many people now come out as lesbians if we're going to also allow men to claim to be women and straight men or bi men to call themselves lesbians and access lesbians' rights and protections. Then lesbian ceases to be a meaningful category. Lesbian is a word with a very specific and exclusive meaning, female homosexual. And if you redefine it to include anyone who isn't a female homosexual, the word becomes meaningless. Here is an example. Happy Lesbian Visibility Day to all lesbians. He, him lesbians, valid. They, them lesbians, valid. My fellow trans lesbians, valid. What is he talking about? He might as well say he's a biscuit, valid for all the sense he's making. Just saying you are something and putting the word valid after it doesn't mean you are what you say you are. He goes on. We are women. I proudly present as a trans lesbian using she, her pronouns. I want to be a bodybuilder one day and get tattoos and piercings. Oh, no wonder he's confused about his gender. He wants muscles and tattoos and piercings, so he must be a lesbian, right? I'm embarrassed for him. In another comment, he says, I want to be lifting in the gym with a girl, call it a date. Well, who said romance is dead? Here's a different one. The amount of cute I am today should be illegal. So it seems they're not only redefining the word lesbian to mean the opposite, but they're doing the same thing with the word cute. Outrageous. Another tweet from Cutie Pie himself. I'm a non-op trans lesbian. I don't have genital dysphoria. I really enjoy penis in vagina sex. But that doesn't mean I fuck like a man. Yes, it does mean that. Are you insane? Honestly, the stuff they come out with. The fact that I'm not only a man, but I've no intention of losing my penis doesn't mean I can't be a lesbian if I want to. Entitled much? And if you put your penis in someone's vagina, you're fucking like a man. What else would you be doing with your penis in someone's vagina? More. Also, being sexually active as a lesbian means having sex with women, not having sex with vaginas. But being sexually active as a straight man also means having sex with women, not vaginas necessarily. I mean, ask Bill Clinton. If you all don't get that, you might want to re-examine what womanhood and lesbian mean to you. I'm so grateful when men half my age try to educate me on what womanhood and lesbianism mean. But anyway, that is what is meant by lesbian erasure. What's the point of a lesbian going to a lesbian bar or joining a lesbian dating app or forum in the hope of meeting and socialising with other lesbians if they're going to be rammed full of men? And in case anyone thinks they all look like these, apparently they don't. One of Graham Linehan's recent newsletters carries an absolutely appalling story of a heterosexual man presenting as a lesbian and duping a woman on a dating app to go out with him and effectively forcing her into having sex with him. In other words, he raped her. I'll link to the newsletter below. I think I've said enough. Thanks for watching. Bye.